A Retro Ramble with.
This episode's special guest is a Sega fanatic, especially when it comes to her beloved Sonic. She has over 380 different variants of the blue spiky speed freak, and her knowledge is unsurpassed in this arena. She also enjoys other older systems as well, and has a weekly radio show on Twitch where she looks at various topics. It gives me great pleasure to chat to Faith, or as she is more commonly known, Retro Faith. Hi.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful, thank you very much.
Brilliant. I'm jealous already of the backdrop of all the Sega stuff.
Yeah. I've got. Do you know what? I've only just got that up over lockdown. Actually, one of the only good things that's come out of lockdown for me personally is having the time to get my actual collection up. Before, all of that stuff was like in a bedroom, just stacked up. So yeah, it's nice to have it. Joe, it's the first time in 5 years I've been able to sit there and I sit there eating my dinner. And yeah, it's nice to look at.
I'd just be drooling into my dinner with all that behind you. It's amazing.
It does start some interesting conversations, people, because this is actually my living room as well, like a living room diner. So the front door's quite near. It's as people walk in, they're looking and like, whoa, what's this? So it's a nice conversation piece as well as something nice to look at.
Yeah, it's definitely an icebreaker, that's for sure.
Yeah, it breaks something. It breaks the bank.
Well, first of all, congratulations on reaching over 1,000 subscribers on your YouTube channel. I watched the video the other day where you talked about it, and I believe it's also a momentous occasion. You've got, is it 383 different versions of Sonic?
Yeah, so basically, I think it's on 384 or 385 now, but basically, I've now got 380 odd different variants of Sonic games.
That is absolutely. I didn't even know there was that many versions out there.
And there's still a lot more to go. I mean, I estimate it that it's probably about, almost double that to get everything.
That's insane.
It is insane.
I think, obviously, when I grew up, I was more of a computer person. I was more the Amiga side, so I didn't really do the consoles until later on. But I'd heard of Sonic and Mario and all those. But to think there's over like 600 different variants of Sonic is mental.
It is insane, yeah, and it's the same for like Mario. I speak to big Mario collectors as well, and we all kind of know that it's Mario and Sonic that have like the most games, closely followed by things like Castlevania that has a lot as well, because there's a lot of games released in Japan for that and lots of different versions of games. So yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, Sonic's obviously been going for nearly 30 years, so and they're always releasing, good or bad, they're always releasing games for it. So this and now it's on multiple consoles as well, so the variants just expand massively.
At the time when Sonic came out, obviously Sega wanted a flagship character to sell the consoles, and I don't know if you thought this, but I would never have dreamt that Sonic would have been on other formats later on. Not when it first came out, like Mario wouldn't be, you know what I mean?
Do you know what? When I first bought the first game on the GameCube, the first Sonic game released on a different, non-Sega platform, if you like, was technically the Game.com and the Neo Geo Pocket Color, but after Sega's demise, if you like, from the Dreamcast, it was on the GameCube, and I'm looking at it and I'm just like, I bought it in the shop on the day it came out because I like the GameCube, and I was just like, I almost cried, and I was thinking, this is the end of my beloved Sonic and Sega, but it's okay, okay. So Sonic's, it is what it is. John, but a lot of people think Mario hasn't been on other consoles, though, but there's Mario PC games as well. So sometimes people forget that Mario is not just Nintendo. It is obviously made Nintendo. Yeah, it was. If you said to me 30 years ago that Sega wouldn't be in the console race and Sega would be on Nintendo consoles, I'd have laughed. But here we are.
Sadly, here we are as well, because I think one of my favourite consoles, if I had to pick one, is the Dreamcast by a million miles, and I just feel sorry that it didn't. It did sell, don't get me wrong, but it didn't do what the others did.
If it wasn't for the PS2, it would have done fine. It actually has good sales, and anyone that sort of thinks that the Dreamcast was a failure, Sega officially released games in Japan up until 2007. So it shows that it was still, not lots of games. We're not talking about a whole library, but there was still the last official game, licensed game release was in March 2007.
So that just shows the longevity of it. And it's that thing as well. I spoke to a lot of people about this, that we only see what happened in this country. We don't realise that consoles and computers continue in other countries and other regions it could be much bigger, could be much smaller, but in some cases they continue way past our lifespan in this country.
Yeah, exactly. But they do, and I think that a lot of people wouldn't know this as well. But Sega actually released a game on the PS1 in Japan. Only one or two. It was more like a Sega license game rather than an actual Sega game. But it was still the fact that Sega had kind of, even before the PS2, were realizing, we're gonna get blown out the water here. So yeah, and the Dreamcast was a big success in Japan. It was really just like I just think it's just more the shortness of it, where Sega discontinued the console. What people seem to forget is that they still released games for it. Like the last proper Sega game released on the Dreamcast was called Puyo Puyo Fever, which is a game that people would know on the GameCube, PS2, and Xbox now. But it actually was released on the Dreamcast in Japan, and that was the last official sort of proper Sega game. So 2004 that was. So Sega was still releasing games for Dreamcast, way up till, because everyone thinks, by 2000, 2001. It was all finished. Like, and I'm like, no, you haven't seen my Dreamcast collection.
Step back.
Wait a second. I could show you lots of games. It shows that it was, there's over 700 games on the Dreamcast. So if it, for a console to have that many games and say it's a failure, I do always pull people up on that when they say that the Dreamcast wasn't a success. It's like, don't know. I think people that know would beg to differ. But there you go.
and I think as well, just because it didn't sell, sometimes a lot of the systems that were ahead of the time, there's so many you could reel off that didn't sell. But you look back now and you think, well, actually, that was quite good for its time.
Yeah, definitely. There's loads of consoles like that, isn't it? I mean, I look at things like the Jaguar and stuff. I mean, you kind of think it just come out at the wrong time. And I think that's the same with the Dreamcast. If Sega had just held fire for another year, done a deal with Sony for the DVD or whatever or something like that, it would have been fine, and people would have still bought into it. It was just the fact that, I mean, we all know the story. There's no point going over it. But like PS2 came out. I mean, PS2 blew everything out of the water. That's the problem. So, and at the end of the day, back then consoles did only sell in the millions rather than tens and 50s of millions. It was only really the PlayStation and the PlayStation 2 where other sorts of people bought into it. So the Dreamcast still sold like something like 10 million, 15 million units worldwide, which is fine for a console at the time. But now, obviously, these days, video games are so massive. Sony have like mass marketed the hell out of everything. So now everything's in the tens and hundreds of millions. So I think, to me, some people would definitely argue with me, but I think Dreamcast was the last like real console where like you had the funny peripherals and the quirky stuff about it. The GameCube a little bit, because that was just a games console as well. But by the time we get to the turn of the century, things like PS2 and Xbox, it's all about multimedia, isn't it? And that's still the case today. Even the Switch is trying to do like YouTube and stuff, isn't it? So, but yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Dreamcast fan. I'll always promote the Dreamcast, and I like to educate people and say that it wasn't a failure. It was just that the PS2 was so massive that anything else around it just got swamped. That was the problem, rather than things failing. But I've got fond memories. I've had a Dreamcast since I imported one from Japan in about December 98. So I had it a good year before anyone had kind of even really seen it in the West. A lot of my friends were like, wow, what's this? Like, because they were all waiting for the PS2 because that was all over the gaming press. And I was like, no, Sega have released this like almost under the radar a little bit. In Japan, and then to me, a console that runs from 1998 to 2007 still having games released for it, I consider that a success.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you talk about that generation as well. Was it the sixth generation, the Dreamcast, I believe? When you look back at the fifth generation, there were like 11 plus consoles, and then there was more in the fourth generation. When you get to the sixth, there's literally 4 consoles. Which is the Dreamcast, GameCube, I think Xbox maybe, and PlayStation 2, was it, I think?
Well, that's it, yeah. That's it. So basically Microsoft and Sony, they just, because and this isn't a dig at them, but I think that's where gaming really changed. I'm not talking about graphics and all that sort of stuff, because obviously they're always going to be improving. But it was more the way games are presented to us in the terms of mass marketing. Whereas I personally feel that up until about 2000, gaming was still kind of for geeky people. Like if you liked games, you were kind of, most people were like, oh, that's kids' toys or whatever. By the time we get to the end of the PlayStation and the beginning of the PlayStation 2, Sony had, maybe for the better of games in general, had turned everything around and now everyone was buying games. And then things like the Wii and that allowed other people to play. So I think that's the alternative. I think Dreamcast, that's why I sort of say Dreamcast is the last kind of bastion of what I would consider classic sort of console gaming. And everything changes there, where you get into like multimedia and DVDs and all this sort of stuff. But, you know, it is the history, and it is fascinating. That's why I think the 6th generation of consoles is the most interesting to study, and why I put a lot of effort into my content with it. Not just because I love the Dreamcast, it's more just because I find that is the real cusp. I think modern gaming really started with the likes of Xbox and PS2, because obviously online gaming, the Dreamcast was the first console to have proper online gaming. Again, it was a bit too early. Westerners didn't really pick up on it, because it was like, oh, why would I want to get my Dreamcast plugged into a phone line? That seems strange. And then by the time we get to Xbox in that generation, you know, a couple of years later, everyone's going crazy playing Halo. And it was like, well, you know, Sega were doing this 3 years ago on Phantasy Star, but there you go. And I think the Dreamcast, I think, will be fondly remembered by anyone that's what I would call like a more than just a casual player of games. People that actually are interested in the history of it. I think everyone that has even just the slightest interest in what happens in the gaming industry will know that the Dreamcast really set a lot of standards. And it was just a bit early, and then there's no way that Sega could compete with the Sony and the Microsoft marketing machine. And I think Sega just knew it, and they went, we just stop this now. We can't compete with these companies. Soon as Sony and Microsoft got involved, it was all like, and look, we see it now today. It's like consoles selling hundreds of millions, and it's like, wow, that's, you know, and it's not just the geeks buying these games anymore. It's everybody. It's like grown-ups, it's women, it's kids, it's, you know, older people, and that's a good thing.
It's interesting that you say that, because it's almost reminiscent of, and I don't know, I'm not being rude, I don't know how old you are, but I can remember the 64 and the Spectrum battles with the Amstrad on the edge, and I see that now with Sony and Microsoft and sort of Nintendo just on the side there. It just feels so like history repeating itself. I'm not saying Nintendo are going to disappear, because I don't think they will, but
no, it's
just that feeling again of there's two big ones and somebody's just there on the side to make the numbers up.
It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that. And that's what makes me laugh when I sort of look at these sort of kids today, like going, oh, I'm a Sony fan, I'm an Xbox fan, all that. And I'm like, you know what, 30, 40 years ago, we were doing this exact same thing. You know, even before the SNES and the Mega Drive, it's like we were doing this already. You know, it was, I had a Commodore 64. That was my first experience of playing games. I think we had we had it when I was really small, like 2 or 3. I think I can very, very vaguely remember like a Pong machine. But the first one I can actually remember being very young. My older brother got a Commodore 64, the Nighthawk pack or something it was called. It has the big eagle or the owl on the front. And it had Trivial Pursuit and Last Ninja and some other bits and pieces. And I was a little bit too young for it. I was a little bit young, but I, you know, looking back, once I got into the 90s and I was kind of a little bit old enough to sort of understand things a bit more, I did, the Spectrum and the Amstrad and all that, and all the Ataris. I mean, it's always been there. You know, even going back to the early 80s, like with Atari and a television. In theory, in television started the first console war, because they literally, if you look at some of the adverts, everyone thinks Sega was like in-your-face advertising against Nintendo and something. It's like, well, go back 10 years before all that. You look at what in television we're putting out there. We're better than Atari. You know, literally, it's big bold letters on the screen. It's just like, wow. You know.
Well, when you look back at some, I always remember, and you've probably seen it, the Commodore advert that they put outside Sega's headquarters with the CD32. And it said, to be this could take Sega ages. Obviously, Sega had the last laugh, obviously, but
God, yeah, Commodore, yeah. I think basically Sega didn't learn from the likes of Commodore and Atari when it comes to like the Saturn and the Dreamcast. And if Sega had just looked back a little bit and thought, hold on a minute, you know, Commodore rushing out, you know, Atari are rushing out all these machines to try and grab some market share back. Sega just fell into the exact same trap, releasing new hardware, and it was just like, God, you know, and that's where sort of Sony and Microsoft are very clever, and Nintendo, because Nintendo will always be there. They've got that family market, and they've got Mario, they've got Donkey Kong, they've got Zelda, they've got all that. They'll never go anywhere. But Microsoft and Sony were so clever, where they're like, well, we're not going to release a new machine. You know, I mean, when you feel, people still play Xbox 360, and that was released 15, 16 years ago now. And you think, well, was it about 15 years ago, 14, 15 years ago? And you think that still seems quite new. And they're now, whereas before you'd get a new console every couple of years in the 80s and 90s, something new would be coming out. But now these companies are clever. And they're like, well, do you know what? We'll just do a little revision of it, like the PS4 and PS4 Pro and all that. So, yeah, they're very clever. And that's what keeps people locked in. And I think Sega at the time and all these other companies, Atari and all those, they all made the same mistake of just constantly releasing new stuff. When really what they need to do is stick with what they had, and they would have been fine. Exactly like Nintendo did. And Nintendo, they rode the wave, didn't they? Nintendo. Yeah. When you think about it, the N64 wasn't particularly successful in terms of a Nintendo product. Still okay though. It sold like 15, 16 million or something. And then that they were clever. They just stuck to what they knew, and if Sega had done the same, I think they would have been all right. Yeah. I think Sega tried to, at the end of the day, we've got our memories, haven't we?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to study.
Yeah, it is interesting to see. It's hindsight, isn't it? When you look, if you knew then what you know now, and it's like you say, a lot of the innovators did fall by the wayside, even though they were the first to do these things. It was just the right thing at the wrong time, in reality.
Yeah.
It's interesting, like you talk about today's gaming, like the Microsoft and the Sonys. It's almost like their version of in-app purchases. They release a console knowing full well that they're going to be releasing a version down the line, because that'll be part of their plan.
Strategy.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of their
strategy. Yeah, they'll know that. Yeah, and it goes even a bit more beyond that, because they'll know when they're releasing a console that it isn't, because if you think about it, most of these consoles now are very similar to like PC architecture. So if I'm going to go and buy a top of the range, like what do they call them, gaming PCs or whatever, I know I'm spending £1,500 or whatever, let's say, as an argument. But Sony know that if they release a PS2 with the top of the range specs, a PlayStation 5 or whatever with top of the range specs, no one's going to spend £1,500 on a PlayStation. So they have to make it a bit crappier than whatever the PCs are doing, knowing full well, as you say, in 2 years' time, when the parts come down a little bit, they'll just re-release the same thing with a few upgraded parts and still charge another £500. So you end up buying two, so you end up spending your £1,500 just over a longer period. So you're locked in and you're buying games all that time. So it's clever. It's clever. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of modern gaming. Not so much the games themselves. I mean, there's some fabulous games, but just the way it's all sent. You like, FIFA. I like my football games. But I refuse now to get involved with FIFA.
Yeah.
And even PES has gone this way a bit as well, where you can't just buy the game. I looked it up on Microsoft. I've got a PC with a Xbox Games Pass or whatever, and we talk about this in-app purchase, and they have FIFA on there now, like for free. So I'm like, oh. But when I looked at it, I was about to download it, and what I realised was you don't get the FIFA game. You just get one team to play as in one little tournament. And then if you want to play as England in the World Cup, you got to spend £15. It's like, well, but is it on Game Pass or is it not on Game Pass?
I don't
know.
Read the small print.
Yeah. So, but yeah, you're right. It is all about this in-app. But that isn't that just the modern world now, though, where they want you to buy into a brand, whereas before, for me, games. How I remember it, I'm sure you do, and a lot of your viewers will remember it, is you buy a game, you got the game, and you move on, and once you finish that one, you'll buy another one. But we all know it's not like that anymore. We all know it's like, even Nintendo are doing it now, where you've got this game like what's it called, Super Smash Brothers. And then, so you got Super Smash Brothers. Oh, but we're now going to randomly 6 months later release a couple of characters.
Yeah.
You can't just download them. Oh no, you've got to spend a tenner. You've got to give us a tenner, and you can have these two new characters. And everyone. But the thing is, would they do it if people didn't spend the money?
Well, this is it. There must be people out. But it's that generation change again, isn't it? It's like, can you imagine if they'd have released Street Fighter 2 for us and said, right, you get one character and you have to buy the others at £2 each. With like,
but they did, didn't they? But they did. If you think about Street Fighter 2, they released it, and then about a year later, they released Super Street Fighter 2 with 4 new characters. You spend another £40 buying the same game on the same card. You see, but so it's not like it's not like this isn't a new thing. Sega did it as well with like Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Like they had this big game that they'd made. It was a fabulous game. They realised that if they put it on one cartridge, it would cost too much and no one would buy it. but hold on a minute, let's split it over 2 cartridges, release them 10 months apart, and people like me spend 2 lots of 40 quid because we want both bits.
Yeah, I bet you've got all the copies.
I've got all the copies, yeah. And it's gone even further with that. But yeah, I mean, it's always been like that, hasn't it? I think Street Fighter 2 was the first game to do it, where you had all the. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a massive Street Fighter fan. I'm a huge fighting game fanatic. But yeah, even I look back and think, hold on a minute, I played it in the arcade to death, so gave them loads of money there.
Yeah.
I then bought it on the SNES. I bought it on the Mega Drive. I then rebought it on the Mega Drive again. I then bought it on the Dreamcast. I bought it on the PlayStation. And I look back and look at all my copies of Street Fighter 2, and I've got about 10 copies. And I'm like, yes, they're all different, and if you know about it, they are. But if you were like a kid today, looking back and thinking like, why have you got 10 of the same games? But they're not the same. And then again, like my brother would argue about FIFA, but yeah, but I want all the teams. I want to play as all the players and all this. So it's the same. I mean, it's just a different economic market, isn't it? Like they know they're not going to be able to keep making loads of discs and stuff to send out to you or whatever. So they have to just do it on downloads. And to the people like me and you who are used to things like physical media, it seems daft. Yeah. But to the people that have grown up with that, like the kids today, it's just normal, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, Smash Brothers has got a new update, a couple new characters. All right, I'll use my pocket money to buy that. I bet you use your pocket money a few times to buy things that you didn't really need.
It's weird. And again, I've had this discussion lots of times that my daughter, she's 17, she cannot remember a time without the internet, and that just blows my mind. Because you think, I can remember times without the internet, but they can't. And it's like they expect everything to be there, like the music, the TV, the games, everything has to be there. And it's.
I tell you what, just on the back of that, talking about that, my niece, she's 5. Yeah, she's 6 now, and she was showing me how to use a tablet, and she's 6. I'm a grown up, right? And I was like, okay, then let's watch the thing on the tablet. And I'm sitting there with her, and I didn't really know how to work it. And she's going, no, Auntie Faith, and it's clicking on things. And my mum is sitting there. She's like, I don't know what a tablet is. She's laughing her head off. And I'm just like, a 6-year-old knows how to use this more than I do. And that's the world they're in.
Yeah.
But it's in their faces from day one. And yeah, imagine that. Like, I kind of look back on the world without the internet as a nice place. The internet's quite horrible.
Having to go to somebody's house to have a 2-player game.
Yes, we need that back instantly. They should ban all online gaming for a month and make kids go to each other's houses and make friends and actually have to sit there and play. Yeah.
But that's how you got to play different versions of stuff, because you might have it on one system and somebody else would have it on a different system.
Yeah, I remember like I had the Mega Drive, and then there was two kids down the road that we were sort of family friends with, and they had a NES. And I used to be like, oh, wow, I get to play Mario today because we're going around their house. And it's like, wow, I get to play Mario. And then when they come around our house, like, wow, I get to play Sonic today. And yeah, you don't get, because everything's so accessible now. You just don't get that anymore.
No, it's sad. It's sad time. We're going into nostalgia mode now, you see. Can somebody build a time machine who's watching, please?
Yeah. So, one of you clever clogs out there.
So, I know you touched on your Sega, your Sonic collection. One of the questions was, because I was watching one of your videos and you talk about your favourite game, I think, is it Sonic and Knuckles 3?
Yeah.
You say the Japanese version is your favourite. How does that differ then from the
it's purely artwork. Yeah, no, the game itself is absolutely, well, apart from being 50 hertz and 60 hertz, that kind of stuff, the game itself is exactly the same. It's just the artwork. I mean, at the end of the day, the only reason why I have all these Sonic games is because the box art is different. There's a couple of regional differences and a few bits and pieces, but nothing that the untrained eye wouldn't see. But it is all just about uncovering new box art variants, the manuals, the cart art, all things like that. It is that simple. They're the games themselves. I mean, I literally have the same copy of the same game over and over again. I have like 15 copies of Sonic 1, all exactly the same, but it's just the boxes they come in and the stickers on the carts and the information in the manuals and odd things like Sega in America changed their headquarters. So like when like the second print run of Sonic 2 came out, the information on the back's different, things and the patents and stuff, and it does get very anal. And most people will look at it and go, "That's insane," and it is. But it's like kind of like it started for me when I've always been an import gamer. I was very lucky that in my hometown there was a game shop that had would import stuff from Japan. So I was from the early 90s, a 60 hertz kind of gamer, having to like force my dad to get when we went to buy a new TV to get a 60 hertz TV. Him going like, "What's the difference?" And the guy in the shop going, "Your child knows what they're talking about." But yeah, and I've been quite lucky in that sense. I've always had that. So for me, I've always been kind of subjected, if you like, to that Japanese style art, and it's so much more vibrant, it's so much more colorful. And then you look at the American art and it's quite dull in places, and it's got that real American feel to it. And then the PAL art was always a bit the mixture of the two, and it just it just caught fire in me. And then when Sonic and Knuckles came out, when I was about 10, 11, I think I was, and I saw that symbol, and something inside me just went, I love that artwork. I want to see it all. And I started just looking into it. And then by the time I got my first job in 2000, I decided I just want to get all of it. And this is where I am today. So it's been a labor of love. And it's just about the artwork. I mean, it is crazy. Sometimes I do step back and look and just think, what am I doing with my life? But then, people collect things, don't they? And it's more than just collecting for me, though. It is like... it is almost like trying to create a museum. Like, it goes deeper for me. I add things to websites so we can catalog different Sega reference numbers and stuff. I've even had Sega ask me for information about games. Like, they've emailed me and say, can you help us with this? And I'm like, yeah, I've got that. Here's the differences. And they're like, thank you, because they're updating their records at their end. Or not so much now that, they're not the same company now, but, say about 10 years ago, they would, look for people like me that, and I it makes me laugh when people say like, oh, you're just one of these people that just shows off massive collection. It's like, but why do you think I have all this? And then, it's not just about showing off a big collection. It's about taking that history of gaming, and the subject I've chosen is Sonic and Sonic Team in general, and Sega more broadly. And I want to catalog all this. I've uncovered myself just in the last 3 years 4 different Sonic variants that the world of Sonic collectors, we all kind of have little discussions in groups agreeing that it's a new variant and stuff. So it's deeper. It's about history. It's not just about, hey, I've got a big collection. It's about, I've said it. When I'm writing my will, I'm going to give this to Sega. I'm going to give this to Sega to put in their headquarters in the UK in a big display cabinet when I die. Well, I've already said that. I know it sounds dramatic, but I don't want it just being sold off by my relatives who don't care and give 2 hoots about it. I want it to be. It's history. It's a history. It's a history of Sonic that not many people get to experience. I mean, I see things when I'm like looking, going, oh my god, like, and every time I'm at game shows and people, and I'm studying boxes and stuff, and I'm asking people on eBay, like, can you just check this in the manual? And they're like, are you crazy? Just buy the game. And I'm like, yeah, but and then they showed me something. I'm like, wow, that's new. We've not seen that on that manual before. That's a new manual. Like, we now know that there's like a whole new variant that we didn't know about. We only discovered it 6 months ago. And this is like, 25 years later that we've only just noticed that there's a new variant of a cart label.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And at the end of the day, whether it is to do with you showing off your collection or stuff, if it makes you happy, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. That's how I always live my life like that. I think whatever people are criticising or knocking or whatever they're doing, that's their prerogative. But obviously they've got nothing in their life to take that away. They've got no interest like that.
Yeah, exactly. So. I mean, I do take the criticism on the chin that it seems absurd to have so many of the same game over and over again. I mean, I'm looking at it now and I've got like 4 copies of Sonic 1 from the UK, but I can tell you what the differences are on all of them and all that. And I get it. It is a bit insane. But I decided instead of going for like full sets, so some people collect a full set of, say, Mega Drive games, and I think it's crazy that they want to sit there and have 5 copies of FIFA when it's not or when it's just a £1 game or whatever. So it works the same, doesn't it? People don't really knock. Oh, you've gone for a full Master System set, but you've got 50 games there that are crappy sport games. To me, it's like, well, that's my version of buying the FIFAs. It's for me, it's what I want to see. And it is mental. And my boyfriend sometimes is just like, this is ridiculous. And when he says I get something for the post, I'm all excited, and I say to him, spot the difference, and he's like, and then he doesn't know. And I have to point out this little thing on the back of the manual or something, and he's just like, this is mental. I'm like, but it's a variant. It's a difference. They changed it after the first. It is crazy, and I do get it. But it's now just become for me a passion project. I just want to catalogue it all and see it all, and
It's no different to first editions of books, though, is it? Or magazines, or
Yeah,
different
that's
copies
it.
of DVDs. You know, they do like an extra 2 seconds or whatever. So it's not a new concept. It's been out there a long time. So
Oh, it has, yeah, it has, and I think like the great thing about it as well is I get to share the knowledge. I get messages daily on like Facebook and YouTube, all sorts of places where people are like, "Oh, can you help me out with what this is, or what is it I got?" And sometimes I can say like, "This is a great example of where I feel like I've kind of done something that isn't just a complete load of nonsense." Like when someone was showing me some Mega Drive games and asking could I price them up, and I said, show me the back of that Sonic 1, and they had one of the rarer variants, and I said, don't sell that particular Sonic 1 for less than 15 quid because there's only a few of those out there. And you know, whereas the normal game made in China will go for like a fiver, there's a rarer one made in Malaysia, which is the last print run. Again, this all sounds like nonsense, but to me, I would pay more for that, knowing that that's a rarer version, even though it's just a little bit at the back of the box.
Yeah, it's like the 50p's with the different things on. If you know that the Kew Garden one's worth a lot of money compared to one that say's got a picture of Paddington on, but not everybody knows that. But if you've got that knowledge, you know that.
This is it. I do compare it to stamp collectors who are like, well, this version of a penny black has got a 1mm version of that, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And to them, it's important. Yeah. So when people say to me, "You are insane," I say, "I am," but. And going back to your point, it makes me happy, and it gives me something to do.
Yeah.
And it gives me something to look. And you know, I love it. And then I'm trying my hardest to catalog it all. I'm always adding stuff to like the Sega sites where I can, and I'm trying to educate people and that. But yeah, it's you know, you should see some of the Mario collectors. They go just as nuts. there is like the opposite side of me is the Mario people, and they have like hundreds of Mario games, and they're all doing the same thing, looking at the back of cartridges and looking at the back of manuals, and then suddenly someone will be like, "Why have you got like 10 copies of Mario Brothers on the NES?" It's like, they're not the same. And,
blasphemy, get him out.
Yeah, so it's brilliant, and yeah, do you know what? It is bonkers, but it is what I've decided to do in my life, and I've had the ability to do it. I've managed to. I mean, yeah, a lot of people also say you're crazy because you spend so much money. But here's the thing: I've been doing this for 20 years, so I was buying some of these games for like 2-3 quid back in the day, even the import ones. So yeah, I was shocked the other day when I looked at the price of. Someone was asking me the price of a game that they were trying to buy, and when I looked it up, I was shocked at how much some of them go for. But that's the beauty of it. I've been very blessed that I've not had to get rid of my games collection since a kid. I've still got my original Mega Drive games from when I was young, and SNES and everything. I've got my original game. I've still playing my original. I'm looking at my GameCube now. I've had that since day of release. I'm still playing it today. The same GameCube. So I'm very blessed now. I know a lot of people have had families and stuff, and they've had to sell and all that, and I get that. So I'm luckily I'm not like a flash in the pan collector. I'm just trying to do it it has been a passion project, and I say going back to that before the internet days, I go back when I do get a little bit of people say like, this is mental, why are you doing this? I kind of say, well, I was doing this before the likes of even eBay. You know, yeah, eBay was a godsend when that appeared because I could then have access to a bigger market, and then email was amazing.
Yeah, I bet your wallet thought, "Oh my god."
Yeah, it did. But then I chose my battles because at the time when I first started collecting properly, I got my first proper job, what I would call my first proper job, when I was about 16, about the turn of the century, and yeah, I started going crazy. But back then, if you went into cash converters and game shops and because everyone was so obsessed with PS2 and getting PS2, they would flog you their collections for like literally nothing. So I'd be at places like work and people would be bemoaning the fact that they couldn't afford a PS2, and I'd be cheeky and say, well, look, I don't want a PS2, but if you want to make up the money, I'm happy to buy what you've got. And they're like, oh, I've got this Mega Drive or this SNES or whatever, and I would say, well, bring it into work, and I used to just give them like 50 quid or whatever. And looking back now, I'm looking at some of it now and I'm just like, this is great, because if I hadn't been a little bit cheeky back then, and I used to go in cash converters every week with my, do you remember the days when you used to get a little brown envelope with actual money in it? And I used to go in I used to go in cash converters, and again, all they cared about was the PlayStation stuff. So I used to say, well, what about all this Mega Drive and SNES stuff? And they'd be like, oh, we need it gone off the shelves. And I had to say to the manager, how much for the lot? And they'd be like, are you crazy? I'm like, no, give me a price. And then you'd always knock them down. And then I built up a huge collection of games really quickly because again because I've not had to sell anything because I've always been mostly a single person and all that, pretty self-sufficient, and I've always been able to have a games room and keep it all and everything. So that's one of the reasons why I have a big collection. If I started now, I wouldn't be able to afford it, and I'm the prices are mental. I used to be a bit hard-headed about emulation. My first experience of emulation was way back when it first started, and I remember I had my very first PC around the turn of the century, and I remember now what was it called? It was called SNES 9X or something. It was a SNES emulator, and it was okay because it was running on a PC, which obviously a lot more powerful than a SNES or a Mega Drive. And my mate used to use, remember dial-up and all that, and you had to download the ROMs, and the ROMs would take a few minutes to download. But we used to play them all the time, but it wasn't quite as good as playing on the real thing because it hasn't quite. But nowadays, I downloaded this thing. Was it a Coin? Is it Coinops?
Yeah.
Coinops. Yeah. I've now got a work PC, like a big gaming PC for my work and all that. Tools of the trade. And I thought, because of the work I do, I thought, this would be, rather than using capture cards and plugging in SCART and all this nonsense, because I was trying to record game footage and that, I was like, why don't I just look into it? And I was a little bit naive. And I asked someone, and they said, Faith, just go on this website. It's a massive download, but just download it. It was 160 gigabytes. But once it all got downloaded and it was on my computer, I clicked on a button and it was all there. And it wasn't like the emulation I remember where you had to fiddle with settings and the controller didn't quite work and it was a bit jaded. Some of the graphics didn't quite work and all that. And I must admit, it is just, especially now where you've got like the likes of like Xbox controllers on your PC and stuff. It just works brilliant. I know I'm I'm like you. I just play emulation. And the great thing about emulation is where I do like to play my games, I now don't have to get them out the boxes all the time, which as a collector, you are worrying, especially like, playing Mega Drive and SNES and stuff. And you're opening up these boxes and you're like, oh, I don't want this to get down. But now, and I don't feel bad using the emulators because I've given Sega and Nintendo enough bloody money over the years. So I don't feel guilty about it. And
you probably do own the game anyway. You probably, like you say, you probably do own the game already.
Yeah, there's very few games I play in emulation that I kind of look and go, do I have that? And normally I look back and think, well, actually, I do have that. But again, it's and the great thing about emulation is you can discover games that you wouldn't normally got to play. Like I'm obviously a massive fan of Japanese gaming, so like the amount of crazy SNES and game, and I can even I'm mucking around emulating for a Dreamcast and PS2. Even that stuff's got really good now. I was downloading Dreamcast games onto my PC, and I can say this live because I've got the games real. They're over there on that Dreamcast stand there, so I can do it. So I'm allowed to burn copies of it, and I could and I was playing it on them, and I was like, this isn't bad. Like this isn't, and the PS2 games as well. I'm like, this isn't bad.
Yeah,
this actually kind of works. So yeah, emulation is definitely the way forward. And you know what? I think as long as you do buy games and you do put into the industry, I don't think. I mean, there's always going to be people that just purely emulate and they don't pay into the system and all that sort of stuff. But I've got my Xbox Games Pass. I give Microsoft money every month. I've got a Switch and buy. So I still pay into. So I don't mind emulating. And even emulating, even companies like Nintendo who are always sort of against emulation. You look what they're doing now. For £17 a year, you can have access to like 100 NES and SNES games. Doesn't sound like a lot when people go, oh, but why wouldn't I just emulate it all on my PC and have all the games? I'm like, how many games can you really play? I sit and play my Switch, the SNES and the NES emulator, loads.
Yeah.
It is brilliant for £17 a year. It's amazing. And you don't feel bad about it because you're paying for it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been doing a series on my channel called where I live stream like systems I'd never owned, like you just said, and I play games on systems like 3DO, and then like you say, you find games that you think, wow, this is pretty good actually. And if I hadn't have done it on that, I'd have never seen it because I'm not going to buy a 3DO. And the other thing is, with my friends, there's a program called Parsec that allows them to connect to your PC and use their pad. So we've had 3-player Daytona Arcade. The actual arcade online, and it's just been amazing to do that. You have to send me that. You have to. I am so competitive. You have to send me if I can play Daytona, because I did.
part of this, this newfound world of emulation for me. God, I sound like I'm like some sort of weirdo when everyone's been doing it for years. But yeah, I've got a downloaded emulator of Daytona on the arcade, and it is amazing.
Yeah,
I want to get a steering wheel now for my PC, but I keep looking into them. But they tend to only now make like really like professional jobbies. They don't tend to just make you cheap Logitech kind of stuff anymore. But yeah, do you know what? Send those. If you guys do that, I'd happily join in. It'd be 4 players, wouldn't it? You can have up to 8, can't you?
Yeah,
so...
exactly. We're quite happy for that. We've been playing old. We've played sensible soccer against each other, because obviously the person who's hosting it is the host PC, and the other person just connects. But this program allows them to detect your pad from wherever you are on my computer.
Wow, that's magic.
That's what we thought. But
that's witchcraft.
It's made lockdown a lot more. Because we used to have something called a retro night, where every month or so we'd go up and meet and play games.
Yeah.
But obviously with COVID, we've not been allowed, can't do that. So.
Well, we did the same thing. Me and my now boyfriend. He it took him a little while to get to me, but we used to have like a little retro club, and we used to go to an arcade in London where they have all and it's called the Four Quarters. And what you do is you literally go to the counter and you give them like some money, and they'll give you a bunch of quarters in a pot, actual American quarters, and you go and put them in. It's amazing. And we used to do that. Obviously, lockdown, you can't do that anymore. So yeah, I've been doing this. I've been getting into online gaming a lot, and I can still play Phantasy Star Online on my GameCube, like a real hardware. Plug it into the internet because it has a broadband adapter.
Yeah.
I do that every Wednesday. So and people like watching it on my stream. They're like, Faith, like, you're playing Phantasy Star Online? Yeah. And they're like, who are the people you're talking to? And I'm like, I'm talking to them on Discord, and we're playing online. The people that I'm playing with, they're like, well, they're not computer bots. And I'm like, no, they're real people.
Yeah.
And the people on Discord will say hello, and they'll type on the game and go hello. People are like, you're playing Phantasy Star Online, actually online, and it's like on a GameCube. And I'm like, yes. And people just don't get that you can do these things now. It's amazing. But yeah, if you've got Daytona working, man, that'll be the nuts.
I was interested to see when you was talking, because again, I love watching your videos because it's so informative. They tell me stuff I never even knew. So I never knew that US Gold had the rights to do Sonic on the Spectrum or the Atari ST. And I just wonder how that would have changed the dynamics if they'd have brought that out.
Well, as a connoisseur of 8-bit computers, you'll know that Sega released lots of games on those systems, and they were always the great thing about one of the reasons why I kind of always chose Sega over Nintendo was Nintendo were very much, we're Nintendo, everything's locked into Nintendo, you can't do anything unless we say, all that kind of stuff. But then like companies like Sega would be like, well, okay, yeah, we've got our own consoles, we've got Masters, we've got Mega Drive, but we don't mind. We don't mind if you want to port this over it. And there's plenty of games that get ported over Afterburner and Outrun and all that kind of stuff, or all those arcade games. So, US Gold were dealing with Sega by the rights, and for whatever reason, I think that was around the time when, oh God, I'd have to go back on my notes, but I think US Gold had some real financial trouble because they had a deal. I want to say a deal with some athlete. It wasn't Daley Thompson, but it was something like that, and it all went a bit sugar. It all went a bit, up in the air, and they lost a load of money. I think what happened was, I don't know. I've tried to find out whether Sega pulled the plug or US Gold just didn't stump up the money. But yeah, we could have had a very strange 8-bit Sonic game on a Spectrum or an Amstrad. Although, funny thing is, someone has now made an 8-bit Sonic game on the Spectrum.
Really? I've not seen that.
Look it up. It's not really Sonic. It's basically just using something that looks like Sonic and making a Green Hill level. But it is kind of Sonic. So it's like a homebrew game. Yeah, that could have. I mean, how different would it have been? Would it have made much difference? I still think the Mega Drive would have smashed it personally. And it was very successful. I don't think it would have changed much in terms of history. But I think it would have definitely given us a different outlook, and it would have given me more rubbish to collect, for sure.
Definitely. One of your recent videos as well, I see you did an interview with Craig Stitt, the artist from, was it Sonic 2, I think?
Oh yes, he was an artist for STI, which isn't as bad as it sounds. It's Sega Technical Institute, not the other STIs. Yes, he worked there for about 4 years. And one of the games they made was Sonic 2.
I found that a really interesting interview. I thought it was interesting as well how he was talking about that bit of tension between them and the is it UG? Sorry, I've got it written. Yuji
Yeah,
Naka.
Yuji Naka, yeah.
And that sort of, to me, got me thinking about that whole Sega USA, Sega Japan thing. It was almost like there was so much in backbiting that it sort of destroyed them as well, because they weren't working together as a company when there was bigger companies on the horizon. And perhaps that, because I know there was a bit of competition between the Saturn and the 32X when they're coming out, or something along them lines.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but the crux of it was Yuji Naka was very proud of the work he'd done on Sonic, and he felt a little bit betrayed by Sega. Want for a better word, that they shipped it out to America. The only reason why Sega did that was because they wanted to get a bigger market share in America. So they felt if they gave it to some Americans, they might be able to make it a little bit more palatable. Even though that, with hindsight, that was ridiculous. But yeah, and then when they asked Yuji Naka to go and help, he was a bit standoffish. And as Craig Stitt said in the interview, he was very difficult to work with. He wanted his own team and all this sort of stuff. And yeah, looking back, Yuji Naka, apparently, I mean, he's a hero of mine. He's the guy that created that curve that Sonic can roll down, and that's kind of and was the one that was able to get the Mega Drive to be completely scrolling without jumping or jittering. He's the one that made it, not the artist, but he's the one that made the technology behind it, and he's a hero of mine. And yeah, it's disappointing when I was talking to Craig about that, and I had heard things about that, but to hear it from someone that was actually there, it's not a rumor anymore. So like, and other people I've spoke to since then who worked on in that team, they have said the same thing. That it's they're not saying it to be to be horrible. But they say it's almost like a disappointing situation because they just wanted to do a good job for Sonic and for Sega. And yeah, then just as all that's happening, you got Sega of America saying, "Oh, we want to release this add-on for the Mega Drive," and then Japan saying, "Well, why do you want to keep the Mega Drive going when we've got this 3D technology? Let's just go with the Saturn." And we all know what happened there. The 32X was a massive flop. The Saturn wasn't as big a flop as people make out. In fact, it sold very well. Again, we're going back to this argument of it's just that the PlayStation was so massive. But yeah, and then it caused tension, and then Sega never came back from that. They never came back from that. It was even when it comes to the Dreamcast, both Sega of America and Sega of Japan, like Sawyer and Sodge, as I call them, they were both developing different versions of the Dreamcast at the same with different chipsets and stuff. So yeah, the rivalry, they never got it back together, and it is one of the reasons why Sega failed, because they just could not get their global brand together in time like Nintendo had. Nintendo were always in control in Tokyo. They're always in control, and wherever you are in whatever region or territory you're in, always do what Mr. Miyamoto says and all that sort of stuff. There was always that going on. Whereas with Sega, it was almost like they franchised out Sega to America. Yeah. And at the time, that was all the rage for big game companies to do it. All the big gaming developing houses in England were doing it. They were licensing out their wares to America and whatever they were doing, and it was all good. But where Sega were a big player, they didn't have that central control. And before you knew it, you had Mark Cerny and all that in America, Sega America, who was like, well, screw what they're doing over there in Japan. We'll do our own thing. And then they didn't get Sonic Extreme out on the Saturn, which was a big failing. That's where it went wrong. That moment when the 32X failed, and then Sega of America said, okay, we'll just scrap that and start working on a Sonic game, because that game originally was going to be on the 32X, Sonic Extreme, right? And they never got that out. And this is the clicking point where I think Sega failed. I think this is if we're looking at an iceberg, this was the tip of the iceberg when Yuji Naka said, no, you can't use my game engine for this game I'm making on the Sonic game. You have to build your new engine. And Sega of America just couldn't get a good enough game engine up in time. They just didn't know how to do it. And if Yuji Naka said, yeah, cool, I built this, because he's such a genius, I built this amazing, and it turned out to be the game Nights into Dreams, the one where you fly around as the clown. And that's a fantastic game. It's like mind-blowing even today to play. So if Yuji Naka had let them use that game engine, they'd have got a really good Sonic game out, as well as that Nights game for the Sega Saturn, and it would have looked very different. I think Sonic not come out on Sega Saturn was the final nail in the coffin. I know we got Sonic Adventure later on with the Dreamcast now, but it was too late by then. Yeah. I think the writing was on the wall for Sega in terms of hardware. They just failed. Not having a Sonic game, a proper Sonic game on the Saturn, that for me is where my Sega died.
Well, can you imagine not having a Mario game on a Nintendo console? It would not be heard of.
Oh, it would be. Imagine that if Nintendo released a new console and said, "Oh, we're not making a Mario game, or we're going to make it, but we're going to cancel it." Yeah, it would be uproars, wouldn't it? And as much as we can look back on as we were talking about earlier about the Dreamcast being Sega's failure, it wasn't. It was that last bit, 96, 97, where that Sonic Extreme game got cancelled. It got cancelled in January '98. That when they obviously turned their focus to the Dreamcast by then. That was the moment. That was the moment when everyone knew, like, you didn't get a proper. I mean, they got Sonic R out and Sonic Jam and stuff, and Sonic, but they want real Sonic games. It was, and it was around that time with the 32X failing and all that, and
it's interesting that it was, like you say, it's almost they were shooting themselves in the foot. They didn't need the competitors to do it for them because of that lack of guidance, I suppose, from like a central point.
Sony and Nintendo were laughing at by that time when they were like, you couldn't get your Sonic game out. Wow, we've got Mario 64 and Crash Bandicoot out. We're absolutely laughing here. Where's your Sonic game? Christmas 97 came and went, and I'm sitting there with my Sega Saturn going, please get it out, please get it out. And then the next thing we know, we're buying the magazine in January 98 and it's cancelled. And Sega confirmed it, and it was just like, literally, I was looking at my friend, and my friend who was sitting there playing his PlayStation was going, well, I don't care, I'm playing Crash Bandicoot and it's great. And that's when I bought an N64 with Mario, believe it or not. Mario 64.
And that's probably what happened a lot, because people felt that Sega wasn't looking after their own customers in reality, because even if you have turned your attention to other things behind closed doors, you don't make such a public statement of that, because people start to think, well, then, if you're not bringing that out, you've lost faith in it already then, haven't you? So
it was already got... I was really upset, because that game... I mean, modders and homebrewers and hackers or whatever these days have got a working version of that game out, and you can play it on your PC and it's really good. And it was like, do you know what? If they had just stuck with it and they had just stopped thinking about the Dreamcast for another year, and we can look back and we can put all the things in place and all the dates in place, and we can see it. It was like dominoes. Yeah. It was like dominoes, and Sega just set themselves up for a fact, and they tried to keep it going with the Dreamcast. But it was always, the writing was on the wall. I knew when the Dreamcast come out that so many people now in the UK frontiers wasn't going to buy it. And forget this stuff about DVDs, and Sony and all that. It was just the people that had invested in the better Sega Saturn instead of the PlayStation N64 were like, "Where's the games? Yeah. Where's the Streets of Rage game? Where's the Golden Axe games? Yeah. Where's all these games that we want from the Mega Drive?" I mean, you think about it, like, it's taken us 25 years to get to another Streets of Rage game. How is that when Streets of Rage 2 is like one of the most celebrated games of all time? It is regularly put into like top 20 games of all time, and it is that good, Streets of Rage 2. How did it get to the fact that we didn't get another Streets of Rage game until last year?
Yeah.
Obviously we had 3, but that's what, it died with the Mega Drive. How did Sega allow that to happen?
Yeah, they didn't look after it's almost like... It's like the Christmas number 1 scenario. If you get a Christmas number 1, you know you're going to make money from that every year. So if you've got a good series of games, you'd keep on with that series, wouldn't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they were trying new things, Sega, back then. And as you hit the nail on the head earlier in this conversation when you said it's always the innovators that fall by the wayside, because they were trying things with the Mega CD, the 32X, the Dreamcast, the Saturn. There's all these new things that are happening all the time, and they, rather than just doing what Nintendo and Sony did around that time, which keep it simple, here, have some games, have a memory card, go crazy. Sega had so many peripherals and all this crazy nonsense happening. And they were innovating and they're doing some amazing things, like things like the maracas and stuff, the Dreamcast, like that technology. Nintendo have now said, like, I saw an interview with someone that helped build the Wii controller, and they said, we got a lot of that from the maracas on the Dreamcast, for the Wii controller. So it's things like that where you just think, in another world, in another existence, Sega wouldn't have been so quick to keep jumping and throwing money at stuff, and they would have taken the steady race like Nintendo have done and Sony have done, and have been incredibly successful and innovated along the way. Sony have done some things like the iToy and all that sort of stuff, and obviously the Switch has been a bit of a revolution in gaming.
The Wii, definitely.
The Wii was that's one of the biggest things. The Wii is responsible for bringing in a much older audience. Like, even people like my mum were playing it, and I was like, wow, my mum's playing a video game. I'd never thought I'd see this in my life, because it was natural, wasn't it? Yeah, and Sega were doing all that in the 90s, all that sort of stuff, but it was just too soon. They should have just stuck to what they knew. Make Sonic games, make Streets of Rage games, do some cool puzzle games and that, do some cool racing games, and keep releasing those.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Keep your core going, and then just spend a bit of on the initiative side. But I actually buy stuff from Japan, like old retro consoles and stuff, and import it to sell on eBay and on Facebook groups. So I'll get big, large boxes of. You might have seen that horrible video where the troll turns up, but that was a bit of an in-joke on one of our Facebook groups, actually. I should delete that video, really. but basically, I buy bulk loads of import goods, and I will sell them at a very reasonable cost to people in Europe and the UK. And a lot of people appreciate it, because you've got to lay down the money initially, and it's just an import business like any other import business would be. So like people import Pokemon cards from Japan and things like that. It's exactly the same as that. I buy big lots of retro gear. Nintendo, Sony, Sega, all sorts, Game Boys, PlayStations, Xboxes, whatever it is, wherever I think looks like a good deal, and then I get it back over in this country in big, huge boxes, and I just divvy it up and sell it at the best price I can to people. And it's one of the things that's happened to me during lockdown, where, again, trying to make money as a journalist, no one wants to spend money on anything because they just don't have it. So before I would get, people would pay me to review games, or I would write articles and they would pay me money to have it on their website, that sort of thing. Yeah. That's anyone that's a journalist, not just game journalists, but anyone will tell you at the moment, getting that kind of work is so difficult that they want you to do it basically for free, and then you use the affiliate links to hope that people read the article and it's a great article, or watch the video or whatever, and then they click through and they buy something. And unfortunately, that's the world I'm in. So because I didn't want to be such a sellout, and the fact that would take so much money to make money out of that, I decided I'd start an import business and I started doing it officially sort of this year. So, and I'm just using my knowledge because I've been importing games from Japan for such a long time. I thought, well, I can do two things here. I can help people get things cheaper to build their collections of Japanese stuff, and I can also, the odd little bit I can keep for myself to build my own collection. So it's kind of a nice thing. So it's building I've especially got some nice Dreamcast bits actually now I've not had to pay for, because it's all sort of been roped into the business. So yes, it's a legitimate business. I'm not a sellout, everybody, as much as my trolls would have you believe. I actually do real work, and people do actually pay me to write things for their websites, believe it or not. Reviewing games is fun. I really like doing it. I feel I've got a real knack for it, and I'm a little bit. I'm trying to think of the right word for it. I'm probably a little bit arrogant in that I don't do review scores, and the reasons are because I will only review indie games. Any first party games I sent, which isn't very many, but I will just review them. I won't, unless it was Sega, of course, but that's obviously sort of third party. But I won't do big companies, even if I get offered them, because I like promoting the indie content. And the reason why I don't give a review score is because it's sometimes a bit unfair. Like I'm reviewing this game at the moment, and it's designed in, you'd love it. It's designed in like 8-bit Spectrum graphics, but with slightly bigger sprites. And there's only like 6 colours or 8 colours or something to it. And it's very in that style. And it's like a run and gun type game with a little bit of platforming and bosses to fight in here and there. Quite a modern playing game, but looking very, and it would be unfair for me to market, because if I had to be honest, the graphics are crap, but the graphics are supposed to be crap. It's meant to be like that. So it's very difficult to, the sort of games I end up reviewing, I don't do scores, because if I was honest, nothing would get more than like 4 or 5 out of 10 because of the way they are designed. But that's because I seek out the retro looking games, the pixel art games and stuff. Obviously some are mind blowing pixel art games. Like Xeno Crisis and things like that. But in general, the games I review, and that's why, because some people go, but Faith, why don't you give a score? So then we know what it's like. And I'm like, look, just read the blurb at the end, and it will tell you whether I think you should buy it or not. And I'll always say, if you like these sort of games, you should buy it. If you're looking for something bigger and more, don't buy it. And I think that's better than giving a score, because
yeah, if I reviewed like a Mario game, you'd have to give it a score, wouldn't you? Like a modern game.
And you're reviewing it on your perception of that type of game as well, like you've just said. So if you're into playing modern games and you get some, I don't know, have you heard of Pico 8? That where they make games.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're trying to compare, I don't know, Call of Duty 50 or whatever it is now against the Pico 8 game, you're gonna review it based on what your thing is, aren't you?
Exactly.
But I would rather play the Pico 8 game.
So would I, exactly. And so would my viewers and my readers, which is what, and I think they understand. I do get messages though when people read them and go, right, Faith, so what would you give it out of 10 before I buy it? But I try to review games that are less than £15.
Yeah.
Because I find any indie game that costs more than that is probably getting into territory of they're probably put way too much money into it themselves, and it's probably not going to be what people expect. So, and I think if a game's that cheap anyway, you don't need a score. You just need to know what the graphics like, how does it control, how long is it, what sort of gamer would it appeal to? Is it retro enough? Is it modern enough? That's all. And I just go through my process. And the indie reason why I get a lot of indie game companies approach me for help stuff is because they like the way I do it. And especially when I do the YouTube videos where I don't be like, oh, it's a 7 out of 10 or whatever. They're just like, you understand. I think you've got to understand indie games to be able to review them, and you've got to be in that world. The reason why I love indie games and why a lot of retro gamers love indie games is because they're like retro games. Yeah. They're like games from the Mega Drive. They're like games from the Spectrum. They're like games, from whatever. So that's why I'm drawn to them, and that's why I think it's unfair to critically look at them. I always try to make it clear in my reviews that it's really hard to critique these games because they are grabbing nostalgia, and you can't really put a score on nostalgia.
No,
I can't if I showed you this 8-bit game to a 10-year-old, they'd be like, that's crap instantly, because it is crap compared to modern games. But if I showed it to a 30-year-old, they'd be like, wow, this is just like playing so and so, and you're like, yeah, that's exactly what it's like. So the nostalgia for them is drawn into it. So it's hard to review those games. I tend to more just do like a nostalgic critique, like how much nostalgia will it draw for you is what I try to do, which is why I'm very successful in the indie game community and why I get a lot of indie game developers approach me for stuff. I'm inundated with indie game code. So if anyone out there is a budding game reviewer and you want to get involved, please message me. I have bundles of them, and I have to send so many back or give so many away that I would love it if people wanted to write for the site. Please get in touch. I've had a few people do some guest reviews with varying degrees of success. But yeah, if any of your viewers like the idea of being a games reviewer,
don't blame me for all the emails you're going to now get. Can I just say a disclaimer right there now?
Disclaimer is you don't get any money, but you get a free game. Yes.
So the 30th anniversary of Sonic's coming up soon. Have you got any plans, or can you control your excitement?
There is lots going on behind the scenes. I'm interviewing lots of people. There is going to be a big documentary. But no. I always have delusions of grandeur. It's going to be a YouTube video, obviously, but it's going to be a documentary, not just me sitting there like YouTube. So I'm doing lots of, obviously it's all going to be via Zoom because of social distancing. So there's going to be a big, I'm not going to spoil it, but yes, there's going to be a big documentary. I'm going to do a personal retrospective video. There'll obviously be articles aplenty. There'll be showing off the games collection. There'll be a streaming. I have got so much going on behind me. It's one of the reasons why my YouTube channel's kind of died off a bit the last couple of weeks, actually. Not because I'm being lazy, it's because I am waiting for that week, the week of the 30th anniversary. I'm hoping to have almost like a video every day that gets released. So
when is it? Is it the
23rd of June? So it's in the middle of a week. Let's get my calendar up here while I'm looking at my computer. Oh, I need glasses. So it's a Wednesday. So the Monday's the 21st. So I'm trying to have maybe there'll be 3 videos, maybe at least 3 videos, one on the Monday, one on the Wednesday, one on the Friday, and the big one will obviously be released on the day. It's going to be a document. Basically, I'm not going to spoil it. It's going to be a documentary featuring some very well-known people talking about Sonic. basically.
So watch this space, everybody, and
Watch this
definitely
space.
worth the watch because, like I say,
It will be.
your videos are really informative, and I've learnt a lot from watching them about Sonic and Sega. So
Yeah. The only shout I'll give myself is, guys, try and catch my kind of gaming radio live streams. It's a blast. We are having some. I've got a bit of a team behind the scenes that do it with me. And if you want to, at the moment, my best content is this radio show I do every Thursday. It is brilliant. We're getting so many good guests. I've got some great people who don't get enough credit behind the scenes that help me get all the content together. We've got tunes, we've got retro gaming news, we've got interviews with game devs. We've got we look at collections, live people's collections and all that. It's brilliant.
Is that
Absolutely
on a Thursday?
brilliant.
Is that on YouTube or Twitch or?
It's on Twitch. The only reason why I use Twitch is because it's a lot more interactive than YouTube. YouTube's I do upload them onto YouTube a couple of days later once I've edited it down a little bit. But yeah, if you guys like live content, and I know not Twitch is for everyone. I know everyone sort of thinks it's this platform where 5-year-olds play Fortnite, but it's like YouTube, but it's pretty much it's basically just another YouTube, but it's all live. It's all live. But the reason why some streamers prefer it over YouTube is simply because it's so much more interactive and you can do a lot more with the stream. YouTube is very constructed into its YouTube format.
Yeah,
it's fine. Again, I've streamed on YouTube and it's brilliant. It's fine, but there's just a lot more interactivity. So yeah, it's check if you want to. If you like the idea of a visual magazine, check it out. It's like we try and make it so it's like you're reading Retro Gamer magazine. Oh, sorry, you're watching Retro Gamer magazine. I know that sounds like a bizarre concept, but that's what we do. We basically just rip off Retro Gamer magazine and make it into a format that's visual.
Next time on A Retro Ramble.
Probably the Super Nintendo is probably the only time the UK got a good deal, because we had literally the sort of the version of the Super Famicom that the far superior, nicer looking, aesthetically pleasing console.
Yeah, it definitely looks better because I think the American one's square, isn't it? It's more square.
Oh, the American one's horrible. I mean, we say it's horrible. I mean, probably now you look back on it with like rose-tinted glass, we do a lot of stuff, but God, at the time, yeah, it's awful.
I would just like to say a big thank you to all the special guests who took the time out of their busy schedules to appear on Retro Ramble. It is really much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode of A Retro Ramble with. All links to the special guest channel can be found in the description below this video. If you enjoyed watching, then please like and subscribe and click the bell notification icon to be informed of when the next episode is uploaded.